Black Friday, OJ. Oof. Yes, sir. All right. I do drive my daughter to work. She does not have off today,
Uh,
but not
Up
yet.
on the top, it says what, DNA hybridization record?
Yes.
And that would indicate, the 825, does that indicate the date that this hybridization was run?
Yes.
And on top, it indicates an analyst there. Is that a gentleman that, works in the DNA lab? His
Yes.
name has been discussed, Harry Clan.
Yes.
And underneath it, where it indicates confirming analyst, that would be the initials of who?
Colin Yamauchi.
All right. And below then are the strips, is that correct?
That's correct.
And below that is the data that the analyst would write down, recording what the analyst is seeing or concluding. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And it lists what each of these things is, the negative control, the positive control, and the samples.
Correct.
All right. Now, we can focus in here. Did you find contamination in this series of strips from the Korean database?
I did.
Sustain.
All right. Could you...
I'm sorry. Strike the answer. Answer is stricken. Jury's to
Would,
disregard.
would you describe for us what you observed in these samples and what conclusion you drew?
Same objections to foundation.
It's a multiple question. He can describe what he observed at this
Please first tell us what you observed.
I observed the typing results of these particular strips.
All right. And what were these, based on, what were these strips to represent?
In this particular case, they were typing the Korean database. So the top strip is the negative control.
So-
that's the amplification negative control we talked about earlier. The second is the positive control, which is the positive control that's incorporated in the kit. That's the 1.14 control.
Excuse me for a second, Dr. George. Maybe it would be easier. I think that
Here we go up.
you've learned how to use this device.
I think
Your Honor,
so.
may he leave the witness stand and use
Yes.
the pointer, please?
Good morning. Good morning.
Describe to the jury how you analyze this strip.
I'm sorry, Your Honor. I have objections to foundation as to this entire exhibit.
Sustain.
What, reviewing these records, what do these records represent? What do these strips represent based on these records?
Same objection.
Sustain.
Where did you get this from?
I obtained this from, during discovery, it was obtained from the Los Angeles Police Department.
And based on these records, what were you told this represented?
Objection, prosecution.
Sustain.
All right. From whom did you learn what this was?
Well, same objection.
Overruled.
Did you have any conversations with Mr. Did you ever visit the lab and discuss how these records were put together with Mr. Yamauchi and Mr. Matheson?
Yes.
All right. And based on those conversations, what is your understanding of what these records represent?
Same objection.
All right. I'm going to allow testimony on this subject to a foundation being laid for what it is. Proceed.
My understanding is that this represents a particular typing run of, on which there are a number of individuals from the Korean database and a positive control and a negative control.
All right. Could you please, now in analyzing the strips, the back, okay. Could you please,
Still have the same objections to foundation.
Noted. Thank you.
Please,
Be a standing objection to this type of document.
please tell us what these strips are, according to their records?
The top strip, and I'm trying to get an arrow to work.
I don't think that's... You need to draw on that, see if you can move it. Okay, good. He's got it, he's got it.
Okay.
Okay,
So,
move it around. Yeah.
okay, this particular strip right here that moves along all the way across this strip.
Here
That-
would be the strip marked 261-1.
What is that?
Correct. 261-1 represents the negative amplification control for this particular set of strips. Oops.
What's the next one down?
The next one down here represents the positive control, 261-2. And as you can see, it types as a 1.14.
Okay. What's the next one down?
The next series represents,
Genotype, or an extra allele.
yes.
All right. Could you tell us which ones?
Well, none of these particular samples were typed as having a 4 allele. But you can see here, and if you bring it up a little further, I think it's clearer, that you can see a 4 dot here, confirmed by the 1.2, 1.34 dot here, and that's on this particular sample, and it's also on this particular sample here, and it's on this particular sample here. In this case, there's a dot present because this was a 1.2.
Now, what does the existence of the 4 lighting up at 261-4 and the 1.3 dot lighting up at 261-4 in that strip, and the 4 and the 1.3, the 1.234 dot lighting up on the 261-6 strip? What are those? What's the significance of that?
Well, the significance of those weak dots are that there really should not be more than 2 alleles here. That represents a 3rd allele. These samples came from a database, presumably from single individuals, and therefore that represents human DNA that shouldn't be there, and that's what our definition of contamination is.
And that holds, I take it, also for 261-7?
Yes.
Now, if we move back a little bit, focusing on another part of the sheet. How did LAPD, what observations did they make with respect to some of these samples in terms of that 4?
They recorded the presence of those, but didn't incorporate them into their typing result.
So in other words, in the 4th
So you
strip
can
down
see.
there, you're pointing that they recorded as a 1.1 with a 4, is that correct?
Correct.
And
I'm sorry, Your Honor, would it be possible to turn to
Yes.
put this down for the camera. And in the 7th strip down, again, those, and what does that nomenclature indicate? 4 less than C.
It indicates that there was a 4 dot observed, but it was less than the control dot. And the control dot, if you remember, is a dot that determines whether or not there was an adequate amount of DNA to proceed with typing.
Now, in your opinion, does the fact that that 4 is less than the control dot, does that mean that those 4s are not contaminants?
Absolutely not.
Why?
Because there are a number of possible explanations as to why you would have that additional dot. And there are no known descriptions of that particular dot, the 4 dot, having what are known as cross-hybridization problems. And so the only explanation for that particular dot is that it's a real, not an artifact, and that dot represents additional human DNA.
So in other words, additional human DNA, that 4 dot means that those samples are contaminated in some fashion somehow.
It does.
Now, did you, in going through the strips that you looked at, and I've asked that this be marked as, what's next in order?
1288.
1288. Your Honor, if I make a request is that, to expedite this, could we reconfigure the arrows on the typing strip at the break?
Yes.
And then print it out?
Yes.
All right, should we give that a number, and I'll make sure to do that?
Yes, should be 1286A.
1286, and we'll do that with Mr. Clark at the break. And so this would be 1288.
He does that to me every day.
Did you conduct, did you prepare a chart indicating in all the samples you looked at that the LAPD from the validation studies, the Korean database, the proficiency tests and the case records, all the strips you looked at, how many times you saw a 4 allele in a known sample that, where it shouldn't be, which in your opinion was contamination?
I did.
All right, and could you please explain what this chart represents?
Oh, this represents a graphical picture of that. Beginning in May, what we see is that they really didn't experience it initially I didn't observe anyway, these extra 4 dots.
Well, before you leave there, just so we understand what we're talking about, when that box says 5/93 and underneath it's 0/32, what does that represent?
This is May of 1993, and under here are the number of typing strips I looked at and how many times I found that 4 as an additional dot.
All right, so
And then this represents the percentage, which would be calculated from this and then displayed.
if I could move through it quickly then, 593, you looked at
Nothing.
32 strips, nothing.
693, 50 strips, nothing. 793, 56 strips, nothing. 893, 1 out of 38. And 993, now 9 out of
People in the
136.
background are taking notes
And
this whole time.
1093, there were 5
People
out of 97.
behind her are
In
too.
1193, there were 2 out of 11. In 1293, 0 out of 17. January of 94, 18 out of 50. February, 0 out of 8. March, 1 out of 5. April, 18 out of 46. May, 4 out of 45. June, 1 out of 16. July, 1 out of 12. And August, 10 out of 61.
And then if we pull back and look at the chart as a whole, you then
I have
looked
off
at those
Monday,
absolute numbers and created a simple
and then
bar
I don't
graph
have off
of what
again
that
for 7
What
days.
this 4 allele contaminant represented
Correct.
as a percent.
Correct.
All right. And as far as the 4 allele is concerned, when you see an extra 4 allele, there's no question in your mind that's a contaminant.
It has to be contamination.
Now I'd like to look at what has to be marked as, that's 1288, this would be 1289.
All right, 1289.
Did you do a similar analysis for the 1.2 allele?
Yes.
All right, now what is the 1.2 allele in the strip? Is there any particular dot for the 1.2 allele?
No, there isn't a specific probe for this particular allele. You depend upon the 1.2, 1.3, 4 dot and interpret it in context of the other dots to make a decision as to whether it's really a 1.2 or not.
So did you perform a similar analysis in terms of numbers of strips and percentages whenever you saw an additional 1.2 allele on a known sample?
Yes,
All right. And this table represents that?
yes,
All right. And whenever you see a 1.2 allele, an extra 1.2 allele, in your opinion, is that definitely contamination?
it's definitely contamination.
Now I have to mark what is 1290. Did you do a similar analysis for the number 2 allele?
I did.
And does this chart represent that?
It does.
All right. And it's a percentage analysis as well as the absolute analysis.
That's correct.
And just to move in, just to give us a sense of it. For example, in January of 1994, you're seeing what there?
20 out of 50 strips, which, whatever percentage that is. And in February, there was 0 out of 8, 2 out of 5 in March, 17 out of 46 in April, 2 out of 45 in May,
Et cetera.
et cetera.
Now, it has to mark this as fence 1291.
So mark.
This would be an analysis of the 3 allele.
Correct.
And I take it that
They don't seem to have too much of a problem with the 3 allele. There's only one observation that was made, or I can't read it. I believe it's
3 out of 61.
3 out of 61, yes.
When you see a 3 allele, is there any doubt in your mind, an extra 3 allele, that that's contamination?
It's definitely contamination.
Now, are there certain, what is known as what is an artifact in this DQ alpha system?
It's a result, a mistaken result that's as a result of a flaw in the system.
All right, now, is there some, in other words, you see a dot that is a result of some defect in the system, and it's not
Correct. A
necessarily...
limitation of the typing system itself has created that signal so that you can't really determine if it's real or not.
Mr. Scheck?
That sounds so fun.
Please, you can't talk at the same time.
Is there a, with the 1.1 allele, is there sometimes something that arises as an artifact?
Yes,
All right, do you have something from the user guide that can demonstrate that for us?
I believe so. I gave it to you.
I ask that this be marked as
1291,
1291,
excuse me, 1292, 1292.
1292.
Yeah.
We focus in on the strips 7 and 8 there. Now, what does this illustrate, Doctor?
Can you focus that a little better and get it enlarged a little better? These two strips represent a typing in which you have a classic example of what is known as the DX gene. And that is an artifact in this particular typing system. It's a limitation of this system. And it occurs when you have alleles other than the 1. So here we have a 2 and a 3, for instance, in both cases. And the C dot is found, and you can barely see it, but there's a 1.1 here in both of these strips.
Now, is that one?
Here
Right.
and here.
Okay. All right. Now, is that? No, maybe we should have Mr. Harrison.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. Why don't you put another dot on the other one? 1.1 there. Okay. 1.1 there. And could you write on the upper left-hand side of the top of the chart DX? Do we know how to do that?
I believe so.
All right. Now, I take it then when you see a light 1.1 dot, but no 1 dot on the far left-hand side, is that correct?
That's correct.
That is what you call a classic DX.
Yes.
And what is, if you can, very, very simply, just tell us what that is. Why does that happen?
Well, the explanation is that there's another gene that's similar enough to the DQ alpha gene to have some of the probe signal, to give some probe signal on that particular dot. And so if you have a lot of DNA, and by the literature that means greater than 6 nanograms of DNA, you can sometimes see this artifact.
Now, let's assume that in these two instances that we're looking at where the arrows are pointing, those are the expected genotype from that sample is a 2 and a 3, right?
Correct.
Because the 2 and a 3 dots are lighting up.
That's correct.
Let's assume for that the real genotype that you're typing is a 1.3, 2, or some other allele, a 1.3 or a 1 that would light up the
That's
1
so
dot on the left-hand
pretty.
side.
Okay.
And you also saw a 1.1 dot.
Yes.
Could you tell whether that was the DX or a contaminant?
No.
Couldn't determine either way.
Because the definition of DX requires that you have actually 2 probes here. The 1 dot confirms that there's actually a 1 there. So if there is another allele there that is a 1, that dot will light up, and now the 1.1 is really confirmed by that first dot, and so you can't make a decision, a scientifically sound decision, unless you do additional testing, sequence it, or do something else. Because in that particular setup, it could be a DX, or it could be a real allele.
Well, is it a good thing in terms of a typing system to have this kind of possible DX artifact that confuses interpretation?
No, the problem with this is if it's from one individual, you can sometimes, as in this case, make an excuse that that 1.1 is just an artifact. But if it's in a forensic sample and you don't know it's from one person, now you can no longer decide, is that real or is that due to a mixture? Especially in a situation where you have that 1 dot.
Now, when you went through the DOJ typing strips, did you do an analysis of instances where you found extra 1.1 alleles?
I did.
Now, could we print this out from one on that?
Yes.
Yeah, we did. All right, 1292A.
So marked.
And at an appropriate time, Your Honor, I'd ask to pass it to the jury because I understand that it's, in terms of seeing the like dots, it's easier on this one than it is on the monitor. I don't know.
Can you see it right now from that
sorry?
1292 that you have? Is it clear on what the Elmo has printed out there?
Yeah, I think you can see it on what the Elmo's printed out.
All right, let's do it now, since if we do it later, the jury may not recollect what this relates to.
He has no respect for my personal safety and my space and my well-being. And I'm suing him. I need a lawyer. I'm trying to work. I'm trying to get a short out. I'm working here. You can't have a cat climbing all over me.
Dr. Curtis, you would be fair to describe,
Excuse me, I'm sorry, counsel. Record should reflect that the jury has, each member of the jury has had an opportunity to view 1292A.
and with 1292A,
A. A.
now would 1292A be described as the classic DX, right?
That's a classic example that's used to show this artifact phenomenon, yes.
How many times in your analysis of the looking at extra 1.1 alleles did you see the classic DX without a one dot?
Of the alleles that were counted as 1.1 extra dots, 7.6% of those were due to this classic kind of example.
And would that be 9 out of 46?
Yes.
Now, what's the next one? I'm sorry, 1293.
1293, I believe.
1293.
Yes, 1293.
Did you chart in the same manner that you did? You create a chart of extra 1.1 dots that you saw,
Yes,
and is this that chart?
it is.
This again is representing May through August of 1994.
Correct.
So what you're telling us is that 9 of these 1.1s were the classic DX,
Correct.
and the rest of them were 1.1s where there were one dots present,
Correct.
where it could be a contaminant,
Correct.
or and we would call the classic DX an artifact.
Correct.
All right. Now, with respect to the 1.3 dot, did you compile a similar chart of your observations of all the strips?
I did.
And I'd ask to mark this 1294. Now, the 1.3 allele, when you see an extra 1.3 allele, are there situations where that could be an artifact as opposed to a contaminant?
Yes, it's been observed and described in the literature that on this particular allele, if you use DNA concentrations greater than 6 nanograms, you can see faint signals on that particular dot.
Was it your understanding that the samples in question were contemplated to have as much as 6 nanograms, the ones that you looked at?
Some of these may have, yes.
Right. Does this represent the number of 1.3 alleles that you saw?
It does.
When you're looking at a forensic case and you see a 1.3 allele, an extra one, and the sample has less than 6 nanograms of template DNA, what is the best interpretation of that?
If it's less than that amount of DNA, the best interpretation is that it is a true contaminant. It's extra DNA.
Now, Did you, now I'd like to turn to the larger chart. Show a compilation of all those individual allele charts, pulling them all together to look at all the strips that you examined. And this is, what did we mark this as? 1287. On 1287, did you do an overall chart indicating what you found in terms of contamination and the artifacts you described, the 7 DXs, over this period between May of 1993 and August of 1994?
I did.
And this represents absolute numbers and percentages.
Correct.
Now, did you also look at what are known as runs?
Yes.
What is a run as opposed to these strips?
On a given day, you will test a series of strips. It can be a minimum of perhaps 8 or as many as 30 or 40. But on a given day, if you look at all of those strips, that's called a run.
Now, did you do, so in other words, these are the individual strips by month,
Those are the individual strips.
and did you compile an analysis of runs, all the strips in a day, to see whether or not there was a definite contaminant on a run that didn't represent an artifact in any way?
I did.
I'd like to take a look at that. Will you please describe for the jury what this chart represents?
So this represents,
Oh, I have to mark this. What, this would be
1295.
1295, and this would be a chart entitled Runs, Percent with Contamination by Month, May 1993 through August of 1994.
correct.
All right, could you please describe what this represents?
Well, it's titled percent with contamination now, not contamination and or artifact. So what I would do is if you look at all the strips that are done on a given day, if you can look at those in the context of one another and make a scientific decision as to whether or not this is true contamination or not. And the kinds of things that would convince you that it's contamination is, let's say, for instance, I found a weak 1.1 on one strip that might be DX, might be an artifact, but if I also found a 1 dot on the known DNA control on that same day, and I found a 1 dot on the extraction control on that same day, and I found that same 1.1 dot on other strips that had 1s, where I can't make a decision. If you look at that all in context and look at the whole pattern, you can confirm that this is not just a random thing that happens at a low percentage of the time due to this DX artifact. It's really contamination.
Well, these charts represent, let's just take, in May of 1993, there were 2 runs, but you didn't see any contamination in that run in that laboratory.
That's correct. They started in May, and they did 45 strips, if I remember correctly. None of those strips showed any indication of the kinds of things we're talking about as either artifacts or contamination.
All right, and that represents 2 runs.
That's only 2 days, that's right.
And then all of a sudden, June of 1993, what happens?
Well, they did 4 runs, 4 different days they did typing strips. Viewing each of those in the context of one another, 2 of them were confirmed that now they have the presence of contamination in the lab.
And we're talking about, this is contamination in negative controls, or the 4 allele,
Not
2
submit
allele, 1.2
the
allele,
documents to
and
the clerk of the court.
1.1 under circumstances where you can confirm it's definitely contamination and not an artifact.
That's correct. By the criteria I mentioned earlier, where I can definitely confirm that this is contamination, not one of these artifacts.
Now, as a DNA laboratory director, when you start seeing on the runs in June of 1993 that 50%, what would that be, 50%? 50% of contamination. As a laboratory director, what do you do when you're dealing with this PCR system?
Well, anyone who's worked with the system for any given amount of time, you become extremely paranoid about this problem. So if your controls show any indication, and I mean any indication of contamination, what you do is you shut down, you bleach, you clean, you make all your reagents over, you run a large series of control strips, make sure they're clean, and then you start over if all of that works.
Is if you don't do that and you just ignore the contamination, is there a problem because this is chronic and accumulates?
Yes, if you don't identify the source of the contamination and remove it, it stays in the laboratory, and you don't know where it is, and it will become evident on a sporadic and random basis initially, but eventually it will tend to build up. And I didn't point it out on those other strips, but you can see a buildup from 93 to 94 in the occurrences. You can see it here as well on the run strip. That if you started with nothing, all of a sudden they have 50, now they're up to 66% or 2/3 of the strips, and on some months...
2/3 of the runs.
Or the runs, and on some months it goes all the way up so that all of the runs are contaminated.
Now, when you find contamination like this, it could be from any of a number of sources or procedures,
Yes.
and
I'm going to go with yes. I wonder if there were any injuries during this trial because of the boards. I'm going to go with yes. Somebody got injured at some point because of all those boards. They just didn't make a big deal out of it.
what you're saying, that should laboratories document contamination?
In my opinion, it's absolutely imperative.
Should you document the steps that are taken to correct the contamination problem once you have it in your laboratory?
Yes.
How important is that?
I think it's extremely important. In fact, there are forensic guidelines that state that is a recommendation that they should do, that they should actually do that in forensic labs. We do it in research
You
labs.
need to stop
and in
right there.
clinical
You
labs.
say a forensic guideline. What are you talking about?
It's called the Twig-Dam Guidelines. It stands for the Technical Working Group of DNA Analysis Methods.
I mean, it's just basic sound laboratory practice that if you can detect the amount of contamination that you saw on the runs at the LAPD right away, that you have to document it and document all the steps that ought to be taken to correct it.
You should document that it happened, document what you did to fix it, document what you did to determine it's been removed from the lab, and then proceed.
And could this contamination also come simply from the methods that you use to handle samples?
Excuse me, objection calls for speculation.
Sustained.
All right. Does contamination arise from sample handling methods?
Objection, no foundation.
Sustained.
In your experience as a DNA laboratory director, what are the various sources of contamination problems, such as the ones you saw here at the LAPD?
Well, as I've described that already, you can have introduction of foreign DNA by handling a specimen in such a way that you're not careful, that you can't get transfer of DNA from one sample to another. So if you're working, in this case, with these samples are known to come from single individuals, that's one possible explanation as to how it got there. Is you handled it, in a sloppy manner, and you've accidentally introduced somebody's DNA into that particular sample during the process of preparing it and handling it.
Now, just in terms of the strips of the samples that you were looking at, you were looking at known samples from these validation studies. Is that correct?
Yes.
You were looking at samples as part of a database where the laboratory receives a single blood sample and has to type it.
Correct.
You were looking at the positive controls on casework, correct?
Correct.
Now, those are not supposed to be, I take it, degraded samples or mixtures.
No, those are going to be the easiest possible sample to type. You've got a lot of DNA there, or adequate DNA certainly, and they should be defined from single individuals.
So the analysis of contamination that you've just presented to us is based upon known exemplars or easy samples.
Yes.
Actually, I think it's probably before I get to the May through July checks.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take our recess for the lunch hour. Please remember all of my admonitions to you. Don't discuss the case amongst yourselves. Don't form any opinions about the case. Don't conduct any deliberations until the matter has been submitted to you. Don't allow anybody to communicate with you with regard to the case. We'll stand in recess until 1:30. All right, Dr. Gerdes, you're ready to come back at 1:30. Back on the record in the Simpson matter. All parties are again present. The jury is not present. All right, Deputy McNair, let's have the jury, please.
If we ever watch this trial again, we are definitely taking shots the whole time. Every time we see the seal, every time there's an objection, every time there's a sanction, Every time they say ice cream, dog, coins, DNA, EDTA. Whoo. We won't make it through episode 1, season 1.
Dr. Gerdes, would you resume the...
That wasn't me.
All right, let the record reflect that we've been rejoined by all the members of our jury panel. Dr. Gerdes, would you resume the witness stand, please? All right, the record should reflect that Dr. John Gerdes is on the witness stand undergoing direct examination by Mr. Scheck.
Don't you work
Good
too hard
afternoon,
either.
Doctor.
Good luck on your
Doctor,
project.
you're reminded, sir, you are still under oath. Mr. Scheck, you may continue with your direct examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. Your Honor, we showed Mr. Clark over lunch the printout from that I think we designated Korean database for contaminant that we didn't print before, and that is 1286A.
So noted.
And I'd like to put that back for a second on the envelope.
Sure. Mr. Harris?
Is there, Now, Dr. Gerdes, this was the set of strips from the Korean database where you identified for us before
That's
the
how
four
I use it.
contaminant in those known samples. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
Now, let me call your attention to the very top strip. What strip is that?
That's the negative amplification control.
And in this instance, the negative amplification control, did that show any contamination or any dots on it?
No, it did not.
I always call
Yet,
it the NAC.
on these set of strips, you've identified contaminating alleles in samples. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Well, doctor, how could it be that you have contaminants on the strip, but the negative control doesn't show any foreign DNA?
Well, this is well known, has been described in the National Research Council, and obviously I've observed it in my review of the strips from the LAPD, and it basically has to do with the fact that when you have contamination and it's at a low level of contamination, you can find situations where it's not necessarily going to find its way onto all of the control strips. So in this particular case, we can see that it's present in the items, but it's not present on the strip.
So, in terms
The
of,
control strip.
would it be fair to say, in terms of these methods, that just because controls are negative for one set of experiments, that doesn't mean that the specimen strips aren't contaminated?
That's true.
You mentioned the National Research Council report. Do you have that book in front of you?
Yes, I do.
That is the study DNA Technology and Forensic Science from the National Research Council?
Yes.
And this reference that you made, would that be on page 67? Or one of the places that this phenomenon is mentioned?
Sustained.
All right. Do you rely upon the National Research
I
Council?
read the book.
Let me direct your attention to page 67 of that document.
Okay.
All right. Do you rely upon this as an authoritative scientific test with respect to the issues of contamination in forensic PCR applications?
Yes.
Can I have this, I've shown this to the council, can I have this page be marked as
1296.
I'll show you what's been marked as 1296. Is this page, is that a accurate reproduction of the section you just referred to in your testimony as one of the conclusions of the National Research Council?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, may I put that in the ELMO and just read it to the jury?
Yes.
Before we leave this, I'm sorry, could you, Mr. Harris, could you mark, could you direct Mr. Harris to mark the top strip, which you identified as the negative control, where there was no contamination, it was clean, but on the set of strips where there was nonetheless contamination on the specimens? That would be the top one?
That would be the very top strip, yes.
Could you mark that, Mr. Harris, on the left-hand side, NC? All right, and could we print this out as, or can we leave
What was that, 1286B?
1286B? Doctor, was this the paragraph you were referring to?
Yes, it is.
All right. Now, it says, moreover, it should be remembered that controls are useful for monitoring general contamination in a laboratory, not the accuracy, of a particular experiment.
Excuse me, Your Honor, I'm going to enter an objection to hearsay at this point.
A little late at this point.
I didn't realize, I'm sorry, it was on the image only.
Sustained.
Is the National Research Council report in this section, are these conclusions the kind of data that's DNA scientists in your field rely upon in forming conclusions with respect to scientific matters?
No foundation.
This NRC report represents a report that was put together by a panel of respected scientists and is well known to be the consensus opinion at the time it was published and is relied upon.
Have you relied upon the NRC report in this particular section in forming your opinions with respect to this case and on the issue of forensic DNA typing?
It's one aspect of the foundation for my opinions, yes.
May I now display it? Get back now. It says, moreover, it should be remembered that controls are useful for monitoring general contamination in the laboratory, not the accuracy of a particular experiment. If a blank control is positive in one experiment, it indicates a potential problem, not just for that experiment, but for any experiment performed at about the same time. Now, if I could stop right there, when they use the term experiment, how does that relate in terms of these PCR strips? What are they referring to?
Well, each you could look at it in two ways, really. Each strip could be called an experiment, or the entire run would be an experiment.
So when they're saying that the accuracy of a particular set of strips or a particular experiment, that one set of strips, withdrawn. When they say here, if a blank control is positive in one experiment, it indicates a potential problem not just for that experiment, but for any experiment performed at about the same time. Now, a blank positive control, a blank control there, is that what we've been talking about as negative controls?
Yes.
All right. So if a negative control is positive in a certain period when typing is done, what are they saying with respect to the potential for contamination on other sets of strips where the controls are negative?
Yeah, you're right. I should go.
They're saying that
We should
just
leave.
because that one,
I'll be
if you have
back.
one strip that shows
I'm
any
taking you with
indication
me.
of contamination, that can't be interpreted that another experiment that was done on the same day or around the same time period even, you can't assume now that the laboratory is clean because this is a random, sporadic process. You can't automatically assume that just because the other strip is clean, that the entire run that was associated with that clean strip might not be contaminated.
And it goes on to say that even in a laboratory contaminated with PCR carryover, blank controls do not necessarily become contaminated on every occasion. It would be wise to repeat all work with samples that have never been exposed to the PCR typing laboratory. Now, when they say exposed, what in your judgment does that mean?
Well, it means exactly what it says, and that is it can't, the sample can't, should not have even entered the doors of that laboratory.
It goes on to say, in view of the problem of contamination due to handling and carryover, laboratories must incorporate contamination control into their standard operating procedures. And outbreaks of contamination and the steps taken to correct the problem should be documented. Do you agree with that?
I do.
For your findings, now referring here to 1295. Your findings is represented here on 1295 in terms of runs contaminated at the LAPD. Does this represent outbreaks of contamination in your judgment?
Definitely.
And in terms of documentation, and I bring you back here for 1 second to 1296A. The Korean database with the 4 contaminant with a negative control came out blank. Now, did the analysts from the LAPD record the presence of a weak 4 allele, or what you're calling the contaminant allele, on these strips?
analyst recorded 3 of those, yes.
So when you were finding what you've identified as contaminants on these runs, in about what percentage of the times would the analyst from the LAPD actually write down or note on the sheet the presence of the contaminant allele?
Prosecution objection assumes facts not in evidence.
Sustained.
Also no foundation.
Sustained.
Well, how many times would you see in the records of these strips that the LAPD analyst would write down and identify the presence of what you're calling the extra allele?
Same objection as the foundation.
Sustained.
Well, when you looked at these sheets of paper, would you see written on it an indication of the presence of what you call the extra allele?
Yes.
All right. And about what percentage of the time would there be on those documents written down an indication of that extra allele?
Objection, no foundation.
All right, I'll allow the subject to a foundation for the source of these documents to be laid later.
I don't recall the exact percentage, but I'd say somewhere between 85 and 90% of the time, the allele was recorded.
Now, would it be fair to say then that there was at least a record in the laboratory of what you're calling the contaminant allele?
Yes.
Was there any documentation that you saw on these sheets, these typing sheets, of recording an outbreak of contamination, and did you receive any documents from them indicating steps taken to correct it?
Objection vague.
Oh,
There was one occasion when it was documented in the notes that the contamination was recognized and recorded. Other than that, no.
Finished with that. Now, moving to the period of testing in this case.
Shapiro, would you flip the chart around, please? Thank you. Thank you.
Did you find?
All right, have we marked this, Mr.
No, I'm sorry.
Should be 1297.
1297. This chart, this is, yeah, I brought a marker. Dr. Gertie's, this chart is entitled Runs in Strips, Percent of Contamination and or Artifact. It indicates below May, June, and July. What year is that?
1994.
All right, could you do me a favor, and I apologize for the chart making. Could you write on the top of this, May through June 1994, right? Right after it says artifacts. Now, the period May through, I asked you to write down May through June, and it has July on it.
Oh.
Well, he did what you asked.
Right. I'm an idiot. I mean, let the record reflect that correctly, it's July. Now, Dr. Gertie's, is May through July of 1994 the period bracketing the testing done in this case?
It is.
All right. And did you see essentially the results consistent with your overall findings of contamination in the laboratory during this period?
Yes, the contamination persists through that period.
I'd like to mark this
1298.
1298. And this chart is entitled Percent of Contamination by Control, May through July 1994. Now, Dr. Gertie's, what does this chart represent?
In this particular chart, we look at the negative controls and ask the question, where do we find contamination in those? And you'll recall those particular controls should have no dot at all, no indication of DNA, because they represent a negative control, meaning no DNA control.
Now, you indicated that there are two kinds of negative controls used at the LAPD. One, extraction controls, and the other one, negative amplification controls.
Yes.
All right, and this chart represents, is it your finding that 10 out of 25 negative extraction controls were contaminated during the period May through July of 1994?
Yes.
And no 0 of 7 or no negative amplification controls were contaminated?
That's correct.
Now, what does that indicate about the source of the contamination, or what phase of the DNA testing process would be the source of the contamination based on these findings?
Objection, no foundation, calls for speculation.
Sustained.
Right. What is the at what phase of the DNA testing process would there be contamination and extraction control?
The extraction control is as you recall, is where the analyst will use a control swab or a piece of cotton cloth and then go through the entire manipulation and DNA extraction procedure. So it's going to be a control that will detect human DNA that shouldn't be there during that manipulation stage and during the DNA extraction stage.
So would it be fair to say from your findings in the period of May through July of 1994 that the contamination in the controls was occurring during the sample handling and extraction phase of the DNA process?
That's
Objection,
correct.
I'm sorry, objection, no foundation, calls for speculation.
Overruled.
Dr. Gerdes, in your review of other forensic laboratories, have you made assessments of the existence or non-existence of contamination?
I have.
In any of the 23 laboratories whose work you've reviewed and the 7 laboratories that you visited, based on the data you've seen, have you seen how does the LAPD rate in terms of levels of contamination?
Objection, no foundation.
Sustained.
All right. In looking at other laboratories, what data have you had to assess the existence or non-existence of contamination?
I've had the strips for the incident case that I was looking at, plus the controls that were run around that time.
Have you, in other labs, seen more than just that?
In some laboratories, yes, specifically in Cellmark in association with this case, and at the Department of Justice in association with this case.
All right. And in terms of in terms of that data compared to the extent of contamination you saw in those laboratories and the extent of contamination at LAPD, how does the LAPD rate?
Same objection, no foundation.
Sustained.
Did you detect contamination at some levels in other laboratories?
Yes.
All right. Was it at the levels that you found at the Los Angeles Police Department?
Same objection.
Sustained.
Well, let's try it this way. In your judgment, how serious is this problem of contamination that you found at the Los Angeles Police Department?
It's extremely serious.
In terms of, speaking as a DNA laboratory director, in terms of the standards used by accrediting groups such as the National Marrow Donor Program, what action would be taken concerning a laboratory that had the level of contamination you found at the LAPD?
Objection, no foundation, calls for speculation.
Sustained.
Well, are you familiar with the standards used by organizations such as the National Marrow Donor Program to assess contamination in
Yes.
DNA laboratories?
Yes.
DNA laboratories that use PCR techniques.
Yes.
All right. And by those standards, what remedies, are there remedies that accrediting agencies use when they find contamination or other quality assurance problems in laboratories?
Yes.
What are those remedies?
They would shut the lab down with this level of contamination.
Now, is the LAPD, in terms of levels of contamination, worse than any other forensic laboratory you've ever seen?
Definitely. By far.
Now, you refer to the validation. 81A. And if you recall, is this the statement concerning PCR method validation training record from the LAPD?
Yes, it is.
And I call your attention to the statement, every validation sample either gave the expected typing result or no typing results were observed. At no time was an incorrect typing result observed. All right, now, did you find, looking at the validation samples run and comparing it to the chart of knowns, typing results that were not the ones expected?
Yes, I did.
In how many instances?
5.
Well, with respect to the, and did you find, how many errors did you find overall in validation studies and proficiency tests?
5.
5. Could you briefly indicate what those are, when those occurred?
Yes, I'll have to refer to my notes for
Please do.
Yes.
Please go ahead.
Okay. On May 25th, 1994, there was a hair shaft had a type recorded as a 1.22, and the hair was a 2.3 hair. So that's an incorrect type. On 9/21/93, there was a vaginal swab standard. The type anticipated was a 1.2, 1.3. It was typed a 1.24. So that is an error. Again, on 9/9/93, there was that same standard, and it should have been typed a 1.24, and it was, no, excuse me, should have been typed a 1.2, 1.3, and it was typed as a 1.24.
Before you move on, I show you, I'm sorry, I showed it to you before. This is 11, what is previously been marked as 1181C. Actually, while I'm at it, why don't I just show you 1181C, D, E, and 1182. It's one of these sheets. It's just identified for us. You recall the testimony of Mr. Yamauchi with respect to a particular typing he did on one of these validation studies.
Yes, I do.
All right. Is one of the errors that, one of the typings that you're calling as an error, was one of those performed by Mr. Yamauchi?
Yes, it is.
All right, and could you identify which of those exhibits represents that particular typing?
It's Exhibit 1181C.
Is that the one that you were just referring to in your notes?
Yes.
Just put that, can we bring that back? Could you identify for us which of those is the incorrect typing?
It's the second strip down. 19-2 item,
And what, and the typing there is recorded as a 1.24
correct,
for the sperm fraction?
correct.
And what should it be?
It should be a 1.2, 1.3.
You consider that an error?
I do.
Now, could you please go on and finish your description of the errors in typing which you observed?
Yes. On 7/15/93, there was a reference blood sample that was typed in error as a 1.34 when in reality it was a proficiency sample that should have been a 1.24. And again on 7/14/93, that same reference blood sample was again typed as a 1.34 when it should have been a 1.24.
Now, did you, in compiling, I'm sorry, the analysis that you've been describing for us, did you compile a table with a description of each of the strips you were examining and the typing for purposes of putting together these charts?
Yes, I did.
All right, and did you turn those over to us for us to turn them over to the prosecution?
Yes, I did.
All right. And that chart, you initially entitled that chart what? Or that table of data?
I believe it was, I don't have the original in front of me, I believe it was LAPD DQ alpha contamination events or something like that.
And at some point recently, did you just change the title of that chart?
Yes, I did.
And where did you change it to?
I changed it to LAPD DQ alpha unexpected alleles.
And why did you do that?
Because this is my raw data and it really does include that 7.9% of the 1.1s, for instance, that could be explained as DX. And my strategy in doing this was to simply record all additional dots that should not be there. This is my raw data. And then to go back to that and analyze the data later. So it was not correctly titled in the fact that those, that minor percentage of 1.1s that could have been explained as DX are on this table.
Now, with respect to the errors, when you were compiling that table and reviewing it before you came here to testify, did you make another change with respect to errors?
Yes.
And could you explain that to the jury?
Yes, originally there was a hair shaft which was from a hair of a 1.2, 1.3 type, and it was called a 1.24, which is an error. However, in the typing of that strip, it was recorded by the analyst that there was no C dot. And I felt I could see a C dot, and that's why I recorded it as an error. But in fact, since the analyst recorded no C, they would not have interpreted that as an interpretable result, and I decided to not call it an error because they would not have reported it if they didn't feel like they saw the C dot.
Okay. Now, do you think it's a problem, Dr. Gerdes, for a DNA laboratory not to recognize that it has contamination in its laboratory?
Definitely.
Do you think it's a problem for a DNA laboratory not to recognize when it is making errors in its own validation study?
Sustained.
I'd like to turn now to the procedures that were used for the collection and handling and processing of samples in this case. And, Your Honor, what I'd like to do is go back to a set of slides that we used previously that are marked as 1149A that I've shown to Mr. Clark entitled Cross-Contamination Factors.
Proceed.
Could we have the first slide, Mr. Harris? Now, did you identify certain procedures for the collection, handling, and processing of samples by the Los Angeles Police Department that, in your opinion, created risks of cross-contamination and error?
I did.
All right. Let's turn to 1159B. Now, do you recall the testimony in this case where Mr. Fung and Ms. Mazzola put wet blood swatches in plastic bags?
I recall that.
And in your opinion, is putting wet blood swatches in a plastic bag in the fashion that they described they did it in this case, what consequences can one expect from the point of view of microbiology and molecular biology?
You're placing a wet, highly enriched material in a plastic bag at an elevated temperature on that particular day, which is the perfect environment for bacteria to grow. And so you're encouraging, under those circumstances, the growth of the bacteria, and the bacteria are going to grow and just eat the DNA.
When the bacteria eat the DNA, is that sometimes called degradation?
Yes.
And that can, as represented in this logo, if we assume that the 1 represents the DNA type of the blood on that specimen, with that arrow, and that arrow represents the bacteria eating away at it. All right, is that a fair description of the
Yes.
process we're talking about? In your opinion, was there a serious risk of degrading the Bundy blood drop samples, LAPD items 47, 48, 49, 50, and 52, by the way that they were put in plastic bags in this case?
Sustain.
All right. What effect do you believe putting the blood swatches in the plastic bags and then putting them in the truck and then 7 hours later after their collection, finally removing them and putting them in test tubes, what effect, in your opinion, would putting them in the plastic bag for that period have?
Sustain.
All right. Are you familiar with the testimony of Mr. Fung and Ms. Mazzola that they collected these samples starting at around 11:30 on June 14th, put them in plastic bags, put them in the evidence truck, and then later at about 6 in the evening finally began the process of removing the wet swatches from the plastic bags and putting them in test tubes?
Oral.
Yes, I'm familiar with that.
All right. In your opinion, what effect... I'm sorry, June 13th. June 13th.
June 13th.
What effect would putting the wet blood swatches in the plastic bag, in your opinion, have in terms of bacterial
Well, it's going to encourage
degradation?
degradation, as we just...
Objection, no foundation.
Sustain.
All right.
Excuse me, counsel. The problem is the foundation as far as criminology, collection of evidence, his familiarity with the techniques, etc. That's the problem.
Dr. Gerdes, you got your PhD in microbiology.
Yes.
All right. Could you explain to us what a microbiologist does in terms of collecting organisms in a field setting?
Well, a microbiologist is familiar with collection techniques for whatever specific bacterium or whatever organism they work with.
All right.
So
And-
it's a fundamental part of microbiology.
And does your background in microbiology is part of your basis for your opinion about the effects that putting these blood swatches in a plastic bag would have in terms of the facts of this case?
Yes.
And based on your background as a microbiologist and a molecular biologist, what is your opinion about the effects of bacterial degradation of red swatches in a plastic bag for the period in question?
Objection, no foundation, request the opportunity to apply your words.
Oral.
The effect would be that it's going to encourage degradation, and the bacteria are definitely going to grow and degrade the DNA.
I think it's about perhaps the 8th time in this case we've heard that.
I know, but this is the first time from the defense witness.
Second time we've heard it from him today.
All right, let's move on to slide 1159E. Now, E. No. Now, when DNA samples, such as the swatches, the kind of red swatches we're dealing with in this case, when they're degraded, what does that do in terms of the risk of cross-contamination once they are in a DNA laboratory?
Objection, no foundation.
Sustain.
All right. Do you have familiarity with the processes that were used for handling the swatches in this case?
Yes.
Are you familiar with the testimony of Mr. Fung and Ms. Mazzola about how they took the red swatches out of plastic bags and placed them in test tubes on the evening of June 13th?
Yes,
All right. Have you seen their testimony about that?
I have.
Have you seen the evidence packaging boards that describe that?
Yes.
All right. Are you familiar with their testimony with respect to the next day, taking the blood swatches out of the tubes and scraping them with a pipette, putting them in the white papers that they call bindles, folding them up?
I'm familiar with that.
Are you familiar with how they then put those bindles into coin envelopes?
Yes.
Are you familiar with the testimony of Mr. Yamauchi as to what he did on the morning of June 14th, starting at around 9 a.m. through 11:20 a.m., when he processed the reference sample of Mr. Simpson, the Rockingham glove, and the Bundy swatches 47, 48, 49, 50, and 52?
I'm familiar with that.
Have you reviewed that testimony?
Yes.
Now, if one were to assume that the Bundy samples, that is the swatches 47, 48, 49, 50, and 52, were degraded, would that increase the risk of cross-contamination?
Objections to fact on evidence, also lack of foundation.
Sustain.
Well, in your opinion, sir, in terms of the handling of samples in a DNA laboratory, are there problems when one is handling degraded samples with low amounts or no DNA at the same time or period or location when handling samples with high contents of DNA?
Objection, no foundation.
Yes, there are definitely problems under those circumstances.
And is that a situation which increases the risk of cross-contamination?
Yes.
And why is that?
Well, I believe at the very beginning of my testimony, I described the fact that if you have something in high concentration next to something in low concentration, there's a greater chance that you can get a small amount of material from the substance with high concentration into the one with low. And so there's a greater risk of that kind of cross-contamination because you're handling the two at the same time, next to each other.
And the nodding of the jurors indicate they recollect that from this morning, too. And they recollect it from a month ago.
That was a month ago. Now, are there rules or practices, to your knowledge, in the various protocols for handling samples in forensic labs and other DNA laboratories with respect to handling a reference sample in the same location and in the same period as evidence samples?
Objection, no foundation.
Overruled.
Yes, there are definite protocols for that.
And what are those protocols, and what is your understanding of those practices? What are the rules?
The rules are that you never handle a reference sample at the same time as any evidence.
Now, when you say at the same time, what are we talking about? Are we talking about, could you describe that?
It means at the same in the same time
I'm sorry.
in terms of
Objection calls for speculation.
Overruled.
well, same time means in the same setting, I guess is the way I would describe it. And that doesn't mean that it's in a sequence of events. It means that you don't have you have a separation in time by a matter of a span of at least 20 minutes or half an hour. There's no really exact time period, but the way it's described in these protocols is that you handle the reference sample, you put it away, you bleach down, you totally clean up, you allow a period of time, and then you can handle evidence.
In your experience in reviewing the practices at the Cellmark Laboratory, how do they handle reference samples and evidence samples?
They were handled at the same time.
I'm sorry.
They were handled at the same time, reference and evidence.
Now, what is their current practice?
The LAPD?
No, I'm talking about Cellmark.
Oh, Cellmark, excuse me. Cellmark never handles reference samples and evidence at the same time.
How do they do it? And did they
As I-
separate it by how much of a period?
In prior cases, when I've inquired of their criminalists, it would be the closest.
Sustained.
All right. Are you familiar with, do you know, according to their protocol, withdraw? Let's get back to LAPD. Are you familiar with the testimony of Mr. Yamauchi that at about 9 o'clock, well, let's take care of all foundation matters. Are you familiar with the serology item description notes, which are 1185, I've shown them, Mr. Clark, of Mr. Yamauchi for June 14th and June 15th, his notes of handling the samples?
Yes.
All right. Are you familiar with his testimony that between the period of 9 a.m. and 11:20 a.m., he handled Mr. Simpson's reference sample and created a Fisco card?
Yes.
He moved next to the Rockingham glove, did a series of pheno tests and cuttings and initialed that glove.
That's
took
correct.
samples, and then moved on to do the so-called Bundy blood drops items, 47, 48, 49, 50, and 52. Familiar with that?
I believe the order was 52 and then the others, but the exact sequence is different than what you stated, but they were done.
But handled the Bundy blood drops all within that period?
Yes, they did.
Now, in your judgment, what is your opinion of this laboratory practice of handling Mr. Simpson's reference tubes in the way Mr. Yamauchi described it, and these evidence samples within that period?
That is not an acceptable practice in any forensic laboratory
Why?
because of the unacceptable risk of contamination from the reference sample, which has high levels of DNA, and the evidence items that were processed, which have low levels.
Now, do you recall that section of Mr. Yamauchi's testimony where he describes that he opened Mr. Simpson's reference sample and blood came out of the tube that went through the chem wipe and onto his glove?
Yes, I recall that.
Now, in your experience, when you open one of these vacutainer tubes, what happens? What can happen?
Well, you can hear. You can hear it's a vacutainer, that means it's under vacuum, so you can hear a sort of it's like opening a coffee can. You can hear it, and there's an aerosol that's created.
When you say aerosol, what do you mean?
Well, aerosol is just very small, fine mist of droplets that would then spray
Of that's of blood.
of blood in this case,
Right.
yes.
And in terms of the DNA contents of a reference tube and that aerosol, how does it? What is the nature of the DNA content of such a
Well,
substance?
it doesn't take very much blood to have a substantial amount of DNA.
Now, you read Mr. Yamauchi's testimony where he indicated that after he opened the reference tube and the blood went through his chem wipe and went onto his glove, that he then disposed of the gloves. He can't recall either in the evidence processing room or in the serology lab.
That's what I remember, yes.
Now, given the nature of his testimony about the way he opened the tube, do you think that what he did next in terms of moving on to the analysis of the other samples was an acceptable laboratory practice?
No, I mean, you know you've had a spillage. You should have basically stopped everything, cleaned down the entire lab, and waited for a period of time before you move on to something as critical as evidence items.
Now, are you familiar with Dr. Cotton's testimony with respect to the Cellmark and the California Association of Crime Lab Directors proficiency study?
Yes, I'm familiar with that.
And are you familiar with her testimony with respect to how that laboratory got a false positive errors?
Yes.
Do you think that that has any particular application to this situation we're talking about here, the way Mr. Yamauchi handled Mr. Simpson's reference samples and these samples on the morning of June 14th?
There's no foundation for speculation.
Sustained.
Are you familiar with have you read Dr. Cotton's testimony with respect to the CACLD study?
Yes, I have.
All right. Have you looked at literature and letters with respect to the results of that study?
Yes, I'm familiar with it.
Is that study discussed in the NRC report?
It's discussed in the NRC report.
All right. Now, what is it about Dr. Cotton's testimony and her description of those events that you think has application here?
Sustained. Sustain.
Is it your understanding that the Cellmark made a false positive error even though there were witnesses in the room looking at the transfers?
Same objection, same grounds.
Sustain.
Now, could you please describe, just in simple practical terms, why you have stated that Mr. Yamauchi's practices between 9 o'clock and 11:20 in handling Mr. Simpson's reference sample, the Rockingham glove, and the Bundy blood drops, how, in practical terms, could that cause cross-contamination?
Foundation.
Overruled.
Also asking.
Overruled.
Yes, I mean, when you're handling this blood specimen first, and it's been admitted that there was a spillage. Now there's blood on the table. There's an aerosol in the air. Now, just as a hypothetical, Mr. Yamauchi we've seen his notes. He was obviously writing with a pen. He may have gotten a little blood on that pen. And then he walks to the other end of the bench carrying the pen. He picks up the pen.
Sustain.
Motion to strike also.
Answer stricken. Juries to disregard.
Let me put it to you this way. In the process of handling DNA samples, are mistakes made in terms of cross-contamination that the analyst doesn't realize?
Foundation.
Overruled.
Yes.
Call your attention to page 89 of the NRC report. And I'd like to have this marked as...
Is that 1299, I believe? I'm sorry, what page, guys?
Page 89. And I'm at 1299?
1299.
I'm sorry?
1299.
99. Do you see a... do you agree and would you rely upon the statements at page 89 with formulating your opinions about this case?
Yes.
Objection, you're saying. That's right.
Overruled. Not as phrased.
Uh,
What paragraph are we talking about?
It's the first sentence and the beginning of the second paragraph. Dr. Gerdes, do you agree with the observation of the NRC there that
Objection, you're saying.
Overruled.
laboratory errors happen even in the best laboratories and even when the analyst is certain that every precaution against error was taken?
I agree with that.
Now, are you familiar this is a chart titled 1186, Mr. Yamauchi's diagram of the glove found at Rockingham. Now, Dr. Gerdes,
Dr. Gerdes, just take a half a step back, would you please? Thank you.
Dr. Gerdes, are you familiar with Mr. Yamauchi's testimony that after handling Mr. Simpson's reference tube, opening it up, creating the Fitzgerald card, that he moved to the analysis of the Rockingham glove?
Yes.
And have you reviewed his notes as to the parts of the glove that he manipulated?
Yes.
And you're familiar with his testimony as to the initialing that he did in the wrist area of the glove,
Yes.
the sample cutting, the testing, and the spot checks control that he did on the inside polymer surface and the backside of the glove?
Yes.
All right? Now, this is prosecution's 272A, entitled Rockingham Glove Results, a series of pictures. Dr. Gerdes, are you familiar with the results obtained by the Department of Justice using the D1S80 PCR system? Obtaining results consistent with Mr. Simpson's 2425 genotype on a section near the wrist area entitled here G10, a section in the area depicted here as G11, and a section indicated on the inside surface near the notch, G13.
Yes.
All right. Given the manipulations that Mr. Yamauchi performed on the glove, as depicted in his notes, and the DNA test results from the amounts of DNA in that D1S80 system, in your opinion, could they be the result of sample handling error?
Objection calls for speculation.
Sustained.
All right. Is it consistent with this DNA result that, given the amounts of DNA in the D1S80 system, that cross-contamination could have occurred in the areas marked G10, G11, and G13?
Same objection.
Sustained.
Is it a good laboratory practice to have proceeded from handling the reference sample under the circumstances described by Mr. Yamauchi and turn to manipulation of the wrist area of the glove in the fashion that he described?
Objection asked and answered.
Overruled.
It represents unacceptable risks of cross-contamination.
Are the amounts for G10, G11, and G13 on the D1S80 system, the amounts of DNA found in those areas, are those amounts consistent with cross-contamination from small amounts of blood?
Objection, no foundation, also calls for speculation.
Sustained.
Are the amounts of DNA on the D1S80 results there within the nanogram range, between 2-3 nanogram range, as reflected on the DOJ typing results?
Same objection, same ground.
Overruled.
The total amount of DNA there is I don't remember exactly the amount, but the point is that's a mixture. And in a mixture, you can't really tell what proportion of the mixture is truly from one contributor or another. Although the D1S80 typing result consistent with Mr. Simpson appears to be a minor contributor. And that is consistent with the possibility of cross-contamination.
Now, could we have 1159C?
I think I'm going to order that Mr. Harris not leave the courtroom while we're in session.
Okay, well,
And Mr. Cochran, it is so ordered.
sorry, Howard.
That's an order, Mr. Harris.
All right, is it a good laboratory practice to handle in the same period in the same location samples that have high DNA content and low DNA content?
Objection asked and answered.
Sustained. I think we have visited that topic now for the third
All right, well,
time.
let's move to the next one. One question. Is it a good well, maybe not one. Is it a good laboratory practice, sir, to handle in the same period in the same location samples from different scenes?
Objection, no foundation.
Overruled.
No, it is not.
All right. Are you aware that on June 15th, Mr. Yamauchi handled samples that included the reference sample from Nicole Brown Simpson, the reference sample from Ronald Goldman, samples from the Bronco, and samples from the Rockingham Foyer LAPD item number 12?
Objection, the only subject was witness expertise.
Overruled.
Yes, he handled those at that time.
All right. And of course, on June 14th, he handled the Rockingham glove and the Bundy swatches.
Correct.
Is it a good idea to handle reference samples from suspects and victims in the same period and the same location?
Objection, the only subject was witness expertise.
Overruled.
No, it's not a good idea because of, again, the risk of cross-contamination.
Let's move to 1159G. No? S. terms of forensic or clinical laboratory practice or any kind of practice in DNA laboratories, is it a good idea to handle many samples at the same time in a rush?
Well, objection argument.
Sustained.
All right? Handle many samples at the same time.
Also, assume facts not evidence.
Rephrase.
Is it a good idea to handle as many as 20 samples in a short period of time?
Objection, no foundation.
Sustained.
All right? You've heard the testimony about how Mr. Yamauchi sampled and then proceeded to test on June 14th 20 individual samples.
Yes.
All right? Does that seem to you, in terms of ordinary laboratory practices, well, in your opinion, what do you think about handling all those samples in the time period he described?
It seems to be a lot of samples for that time period.
All right. Let's turn to 1159H. Now, you've heard testimony with respect to the practices of the LAPD crime laboratory personnel, Mr. Fenton, Ms. Mazzola, and Mr. Yamauchi, with respect to changing gloves. Are you familiar with that?
Yes.
All right. Now, as a microbiologist and DNA laboratory director, do you believe that analysts handling blood samples should routinely change their gloves between handling each item?
Yes, I believe they should do that.
And why?
Especially with a technique like PCR, this is such a sensitive technique, you might not even notice that you have a small amount of blood or even an aerosol of that blood on your glove, and unless you change the glove, you can't eliminate the possibility that you might have transferred that to the next sample.
Now, in terms of laboratory paper, are you familiar with the testimony of Mr. Fung and Ms. Mazzola that when the samples were brought into the LAPD laboratory and they were taken out of the plastic bags and put into the test tubes, that they did not change laboratory paper between handling those items?
I'm familiar with that.
Are you familiar with their testimony that when they took the swatches out of the tubes the next morning and scraped them out with a pipette onto a bindle, that they did not change the laboratory paper between each item?
I'm familiar with that.
In your opinion, are those sound laboratory practices in terms of the danger of cross-contamination?
That's going to create a shower, an aerosol, which is going to fall down on that entire area and can easily be transferring DNA from one item to another.
In terms of aerosols, then, it's one of our little logos. I take it, what was that you were saying about scraping the swatches out of the tubes?
Yes, it's going to flake the DNA, and it's going to fall down on that area, and it's not going to fall right down straight onto the bindle. It can fall in that entire area.
We've heard some questions being asked in this trial, such as, have you heard them, can DNA fly? You heard that?
Yes, I have.
Now, when aerosols are created of these kinds of particles in a laboratory, do they just fall right to the ground, or how long do they remain ambient in an atmosphere?
Objection, no foundation, calls for speculation.
Sustained.
Are you familiar with the problem of dust or aerosols in DNA laboratories?
Yes,
Is that a problem encountered in forensic as well as clinical work?
in both areas, and
Sorry, objection, no foundation.
Sustained.
All right.
Striking answer.
In both areas and?
As to forensic.
No. Proceed.
Are you familiar with Mr. Yamauchi's testimony that in processing the Rockingham glove and the LAPD items 47, 48, 49, 50, and 52 in the morning of June 14th, that he did not routinely change laboratory paper between those items?
yes, I'm familiar with that.
Is that a sound laboratory practice?
It creates unacceptable risks.
Did you conduct a tour of the laboratory at the Los Angeles Police Department?
Yes, I did.
Did he conducted the tour?
I'm sorry, I should. Were you allowed to go in?
Yes, I was.
And when were you allowed to go in? On how many occasions?
On two occasions, one in December of '94, and the other was in January of '95.
Did you get to observe the evidence processing room?
Yes.
And when you went back the second time, you said in what date?
I believe it was January 18th.
All right. On that occasion, were pictures taken?
They were.
And who took those pictures?
There were two photographers there, one from the police department and Mark Taylor.
And he
And
was
Mark
a-
Taylor's was working with the defense.
And first, let me just show you this picture.
Has that been previously marked?
Oh, what are we up to?
I think 1300. Mrs. Robertson? 1300?
Sorry, could I see it, Your Honor?
And do you recognize this to be the evidence processing room where, and that table depicted as being the area where Mr. Yamauchi testified he processed the samples on the morning of June 14th?
Yes.
And you looked around, you're familiar with that room?
I am.
And that was a part of the basis for your testimony about those procedures that we just reviewed.
That's correct.
Now, did you go into the serology laboratory where Mr. Yamauchi and Mr. Matheson work?
Yes.
All right. And mark this as 1301. And what is that a picture of, sir?
This is a chemical fume hood.
Well, that is the hood in the LAPD serology laboratory?
Yes, it is.
Could you please tell us what a laminar flow hood is?
Yes. In a laminar flow hood, there is a screen along the bottom edge of the hood that draws a curtain of air down across that screen around to the back of the hood and then filters across something called a HEPA filter. And the HEPA filter filters out microscopic particles, dust, certain bacteria, and it cleans the air. So the idea behind the laminar flow hood is it actually would have a window in the front that would lower down, all the way down, with the exception of just enough room to stick your hands in, about 6 inches. And then this flow of air flows across your hands, and it basically forms a curtain of air that doesn't allow air from the room to get into the hood, and it doesn't allow anything from inside the hood to get out. And it's a hood that's frequently called a biosafety cabinet. And the reason for that is it protects the analyst from being infected if there's an infectious agent. So in microbiology or virology, we use these to protect an individual from being exposed to a dangerous agent they're working with. The other purpose of it is that it prevents anything from the outside from getting in. And so the purpose of that, again, from a microbiology standpoint, is you don't want things floating around on dust, such as spores or fungi, bacteria, DNA, things that attach to dust and float around. You don't want those contaminating what you're working with. Now this hood here, the chemical fume hood, this hood was designed for the purpose of drawing fumes away from a chemist. So if they're working with something that has a noxious smell or something that has it can be toxic in terms of breathing that in, this hood is designed to pull air from the room into the hood and up an exhaust vent that goes out to the outside of the building. So the purpose of this is to draw air out of the room, through the hood, and then out of the building, and
Let me show-
therefore pull the fumes away from the individual who's working.
Sorry.
So they have two different purposes.
Now, let me just show you two other pictures that were marked as 1302 and 1303 of the area around this hood.
This is the workstations that are directed, they're found directly across the room from the hood that we just saw a picture of
This is in the LAPD serology.
in the LAPD serology lab.
And what is this picture? That was 1302, Your Honor. This was 1302.
This is looking, you can see those lab coats on the workstations there, looking back again across the room, and the hood is located about halfway down the room there.
Can we just direct an arrow towards the hood so you can, you just point it out. Okay.
Workstations across,
Or actually, just move the arrow to the right.
right there.
No, to the left hand. Yeah. Now, when you're talking about air, so in other words, it's this hood in the LAPD. It's a chemical hood that sucks air from that whole area into that workstation and up and out.
Correct, that's correct.
Now, you've heard the testimony.
Micah, we need your
in
sharp
other
wit today.
forensic laboratories, as well as clinical laboratories that you visited, do they use laminar flow hoods?
That's the appropriate hood to use if you are concerned about protecting an analyst and protecting a specimen from microbiological contamination
Laminar flow hoods
or
used,
DNA contamination.
laminar flow hoods used in forensic labs.
Yes,
Is the use of knowing that you have a laminar flow hood as opposed to a chemical hood, is this a fundamental piece of information in terms of DNA laboratory practices?
Sustained.
All right. Is it a fundamental fact in terms of DNA laboratory procedures to know if a hood is a laminar flow hood as opposed to a chemical hood?
Sustained.
All right. Have you heard the testimony or familiar with the testimony of Mr. Yamauchi, Mr. Matheson, that this hood is a laminar flow hood?
yes,
Are they correct in their statement that it's a laminar flow hood?
no.
What does that indicate to you about the level of expertise they have in terms of DNA typing?
Sustained.
Did you, look at these two. Do you have an opportunity to look at the refrigerator within the serology laboratory?
I did.
All right. And did you observe there items stored by Mr. Yamauchi, case items?
Yes,
All right. You have directed photographs be taken of that.
I did.
All right, I'd like to mark what is, I guess we're 1304, 1305.
All right, Mr. Scheck, 5 minutes.
We also have a printout that with the laminar flow hood at mark 13038.
Chemical.
Chemical hood.
Chemical.
See, it's an easy mistake.
Chemical / laminar.
All right.
All right, show you first 1305. What's that?
This is a view of Mr. Yamauchi's evidence storage shelf.
That's within the serology freezer,
That's correct.
Right.
Refrigerator.
refrigerator. What is 1304?
That's a close-up of the rack that was sitting there on that shelf.
All right. Now, how should tubes, test tubes, that contain samples, the forensic lab or DNA lab, be kept?
I'm sorry, objection, lack of foundation.
The way Gary Sims at the Department of Justice stacks his tubes,
Yes.
how does he do it?
Gary Sims places the rack with one tube, and then he leaves 2 or 3 spaces, another tube. He leaves plenty of space between every tube so that there's no possibility, if you go in there with your fingers or a glove, of touching one tube to the other, or of the tubes touching one another.
All right. And these are the same kind of tubes that we're talking about when you pull off the tops that you get aerosols.
Objection, leading.
Sustained.
Just 2 more. What is this picture of? We can mark this 13, I think we're up to 1306. And 1307. 1306, what is this a picture of?
This is a picture of the Chelex extraction solution. It's used for DNA extraction. It's located in that chemical fume hood that we saw a few moments ago.
And who directed you to this? Mr. Yamauchi?
Mr. Yamauchi.
All right. And could we zoom in here on the label on that bottle? Is there a date there that has some significance?
Yes, there is.
What is that?
It's 9/12/94 is the date that is on the chemical. Refers to the date in which it was made up. And we were visiting this laboratory on January 18th. At least these pictures were taken on January 18th, 1995. That indicates that this particular chemical has been there a number of months and has been used over and over those months,
Is that a good laboratory practice?
especially not in PCR.
Lack of foundation. Also speculation.
Sustained. Answers, last two answers are stricken.
The solution here, what is it?
Chelex is a solution that's used in the DNA extraction procedure.
Are you familiar with how the Chelex solution is used in the DNA extraction procedure at LAPD according to their protocol and at other forensic labs and in other clinical labs?
Yes.
Lack of foundation.
Overruled.
Yes, I am.
And how is it, what does the term aliquot mean?
Aliquot means taking a large bottle like this and splitting it into very small tubes so that there's a smaller amount of material, smaller solution amount in those tubes.
How is the Chelex dealt with at the Cellmark laboratory?
Yo, me
Chelex solution
too.
in Cellmark is made up fresh weekly.
And you determined that when you took a tour in connection with this case?
Yes, I did.
All right. And in your judgment, it is a sound laboratory practice to keep the Chelex solution, at least indicated here, to be using it from 9/12/94 through what, January 18th, 95?
Objection, lack of foundation, calls for speculation.
Sustained.
Well, what is the terms of DNA laboratory methods? Is there a problem with using a Chelex solution from the same bottle for a substantial period of time?
Objection unintelligible.
I understand it, but same objection. I think there's some people in the audience who want to step out. All right, that objection is overruled, but it does assume facts that aren't in evidence. This particular date is subject to interpretation. There are two different ways you can interpret that date, counsel. All right, let's take our recess at this point. All right, ladies and gentlemen, please remember all my admonitions to you will be in recess for 15 minutes. All right, Dr. Gerdes, you can step down.
On each item, you would tend to aliquot it into smaller volumes so that you don't go into that bottle a long time. The amount that's shown in this bottle is a 6-month supply.
Excuse me, objection, no foundation.
Overruled.
And why is it, why, if you went into the bottle many times, in terms of contamination, does that have any consequences?
Yes, every time you open the bottle, there's a chance of something falling in there. Every time you pipette or put a pipetter into that bottle, there's a chance of introducing something accidentally. So it goes back to the manipulation we talked about earlier. The more you manipulate things, the more you go in and out of them, the higher the risk. Every time you open, there's a risk, and the more times you open it, the greater the risk.
Have you reviewed records in connection with the hybridization sheets from the Los Angeles Police Department as to lots of Chelex? Have you done
Yes,
that?
yes.
Now, up here on this particular bottle, there's a number 5. What does that represent?
That's their lot number.
All right. Have you looked at lot numbers on the laboratory sheets with respect to the use of Chelex at the lab?
Yes.
And what is the frequency, in general terms, of how often they go to a new lot?
The lot numbers are used, the same lot numbers recorded for DNA extractions over a period of months.
Is that a good practice in your opinion?
No.
This is 1307. What is this picture of, Dr. Curtis?
This is another reagent. This particular reagent called TE buffer is used to resuspend DNA.
And whose TE buffer is this, if we can go a little
That's-
tighter on this picture?
You'll notice there's a CY on the bottle, so this is Colin Yamauchi's.
And so this picture was taken at his workstation?
At his workstation, yes.
And again, how much TE buffer is used in the course of running a DNA test?
Less than a drop.
And is this another kind of reagent that ought to be aliquoted?
Yes.
And what is the date on this particular picture?
5/25/93,
And when was this picture taken?
January 18th, 1995.
You're
I'd like to
close,
show
but
you,
no. The plane, the plane.
Prosecution's 287, I believe, entitled Los PCR DNA Typing, Los Angeles Police Department. Now, this first set of pictures under the title Piper Tech Extraction, is that picture Mr. Amauchi?
Yes,
And this is the workstation you were just referring to?
yes.
And what does this depict?
This is the area in which he would set up his DNA extractions.
Now, this is in the serology lab room,
Yes,
and this is at the Piper Tech location.
correct.
All right. Now, in terms of designing DNA laboratories using PCR, what importance is there in terms of structuring the flow of work from the point that the sample is first taken into the lab to the end of the process?
Well, in this process, you recall, you start with a small amount of DNA, and after you've gone through the amplification process, you end up with a very large amount of DNA. So if you can maintain a one-way flow so that you always go from the smaller to the larger and never back, it reduces the risk of crossover of the high amount to the low amount, which we've talked about a number of times. So basically, by designing the laboratory in such a way that you only have a one-way flow of low DNA concentration to high and never back, it's another procedure that's used by laboratories to try and reduce the risk of contamination.
So this first picture where it shows Piper Tech extraction, that takes place in the serology lab.
Yes,
And the samples have come from that evidence processing room, the one with the garage, goes up and down. They go into this room, is that correct? Now, the next picture down on the PCR DNA typing board shows pictures called pre-amplification, amplification, hybridization of photography.
yes,
And those are at the Parker Center?
correct.
All right, could you tell us where that is and how we get from Piper Tech at the extraction phase to the Parker Center for the
So
amplification
Parker
phase?
Center is actually located 1 to 2 miles from Piper Tech. Totally different building, so it's definitely separated. The amplification is set up in one room, the pre-amplification room. That's where the tubes and the reagents are all mixed together, and then it's amplified and hybridized in a second.
All right. Now, after, when you do the amplification, is that where you produce the greater amounts of DNA? They're sometimes called the amplicons?
Correct.
All right. Now, the next step here in this board indicates that Piper Tech product gel electrophoresis. And there's been testimony that, from Mr. Yamauchi, that DNA samples are then taken back to Piper Tech into a room where they are then put on this PCR product gel.
Correct.
And did he walk you through that process?
Yes, he did.
And did you observe those rooms in that setup?
Yes, I did.
Is bringing the amplicons for the PCR product back into Piper Tech consistent with the process of having a one-way workflow?
No, because you see, you've gone from low DNA, and right at this step, you've created high DNA by amplifying it. And this is at a different location, totally different building. But now they turn around and they go back to this building. So they're carrying back high levels of DNA into the area where there should be only low levels of DNA.
Are you familiar with the setup at the Department of Justice in terms of the flow of work?
Yes,
Do you recall the testimony of Gary Sims with respect to stating that after amplification, that PCR product never leaves the amplification room in that laboratory?
yes,
Is that true here at LAPD?
no,
Is this a good and sound laboratory practice?
no.
My apologies, Your Honor, I misread it. It's, that board is actually 281.
All right. Rather than 287.
Yes.
Thank you.
Now, Dr. Gerdes, there's been substantial testimony in this case with respect to substrate controls that were used for the Bundy blood drops, LAPD items 47, 48, 49, 50, and 52.
Yes,
Are you familiar with that testimony?
I am.
All right. Now, first of all, let me ask you, were any substrate controls taken from the glove that, the Rockingham glove that Mr. Yamauchi analyzed on June 14th?
No,
So, would it be fair to say that substrate controls cannot be used as a check against cross-contamination with respect to that glove?
that's correct.
Now, Dr. Gerdes, does the fact that testing of the Bundy blood drop substrate controls by LAPD, DOJ, and Cellmark did not reveal the presence of DNA prove that there was no cross-contamination of these samples?
Objection, no foundation. So the witness exercise.
Sustain.
All right. Are you familiar with the testimony of Mr. Sims, of Mr. Yamauchi, that substrate controls were typed?
Yes,
Did you review that data?
yes,
Did you review the data and the testimony with respect to what happened to those substrate controls from the time that they first arrived to the laboratory, according to Fung and Mazzola, what Mr. Yamauchi did with them, where they were sent and when to Cellmark and the Department of Justice?
yes, I
Have you
reviewed all
reviewed
that.
that data?
I reviewed that.
Have you reviewed the test results on those substrate controls?
Yes, I have.
All right. Having reviewed the data from those substrate controls, do you believe that the fact that testing on those reveal the presence of DNA?
Objection.
Sustain.
Did you review the laboratory work concerning tests performed on the substrate controls at LAPD, the Department of Justice, and Cellmark?
Yes, I did.
All right. What were those results?
The substrate controls appeared clean.
All right. Does the fact that the substrate controls appear clean prove in your mind that there was no cross-contamination of the samples 47, 48, 49, 50, and 52?
Objection, also speculation.
Overruled.
No.
Why?
Well, there's a number of reasons. Number one, as we mentioned earlier in the NRC report and in my evaluation of the numerous runs at LAPD, it's not unusual to have that particular control not show a contaminant, even though other items in that run had a contaminant. And you'll recall we showed you that on the example of the 4 contamination earlier this morning.
In terms of these substrate controls, is there something known in molecular biology and analytical chemistry that's known as carrier or stabilizer?
Yes.
Could you describe what that is?
When one is working with molecules in very small concentrations, very small amounts, if you do this in a laboratory, you need to store them in the presence of something called a carrier. If you don't store them in the presence of something called a carrier, they tend to disappear. You lose them. Things, when they're too small in amounts, they can stick to the size of the bottle. There's unknown things in that solution that they're not quite stable. You just basically tend to lose it. So if you're looking at something analytically that's in a very small concentration, it's a standard practice that you add something called a carrier. In the case of DNA, what that would mean is you would add a non-human DNA to sort of stabilize the situation, such as salmon sperm DNA. And that would stabilize very small amounts of DNA so that they wouldn't disappear.
If you was, Dr. Gerdes, let me ask you to assume that the swatches from samples 47, 48, 49, 50, and 52 were degraded by bacteria, and that what was on those swatches was bacterial DNA. Do you have that in mind?
Yes.
And that subsequent to that, those swatches and perhaps control swatches were contaminated with foreign DNA.
Yes.
In terms of this carrier principle, what would the effect be in terms of the DNA that fell on the swatches with bacterial contamination as opposed to the blank swatches?
He really needs to stop. The judge needs to stop him. That was rough, guys. It's okay. Look, he's in the next video too. He's in the next video, and then we get a break, and then he's back. Oh man. But it looks like we get some motion hearings coming up soon. When then Dr. Lee comes on. Okay. All right. Whew. We're almost. We're just a little bit away from the 400s. We are on video 385 out of 493. Holy crap. Guys, thank you so much for coming out today and joining me for OJ. I hope you guys ate so much yesterday. And, you know, it's time to get back to work now. Thanksgiving's over. Snap back into it. I shall see you all in the morning, very, very, very early. Set your alarm clocks. Or don't. Sleep is too good. Sleep as much as you can. I think it's Black Friday, so go buy something. It's good for the economy. Not for your pocketbook, though. Bye, guys. Have a great day. See ya.